Hello, we are Emily Harvey
and Rachel McCuller, ecology students at Bridgewater College, and in this video we are going to summarize our research project, the effects of riparian tree cover on the abundance and diversity of macroinvertebrates.
The purpose of our project is to test and see if tree cover affects abundance and diversity of macroinvertebrates in 3 local rivers. We chose rivers that have one side of natural buffer and the other side experiencing human disturbances. These disturbances included yard maintenance, agricultural, and recreational field use.
Our hypothesis was that the river sides with tree cover and riparian vegetation will have a higher abundance and diversity of macroinvertebrates.
To set up our test sites, we picked 2 locations that were 3 meters away from the edge of the river and 5 meters away from the other site. Depth of each site was also measured during the setup process. There were 2 sites on each side of the river, and the process was repeated at each river.
Along with measuring depths, we collected information on 2 environmental conditions, dissolved oxygen and pH. These were collected at each site, and the average and standard errors were taken for sides with tree cover and sides without tree cover.
At each site, we used a net to collect macroinvertebrates. As you can see on the video on the left, we scuffed the bottom of the river 2 feet upstream from the net for roughly 1 minute. We then pulled the net from the river and hand-collected each macroinvertebrate for later identification.
We used a dichotomous key and a light microscope to identify macroinvertebrates to order in the lab. From top left to bottom right are examples of a midge, mayfly larvae, a damselfly larvae, and a scud.
As you can see in this graph, the communities that we looked at both have low species evenness, but the community with tree cover, as illustrated by the blue line, has higher species richness than the community without tree cover.
When looking at our results to compare the average number of individuals found, we saw that there were no statistical difference in the number of individuals found at Cooks Creek when comparing the size. However, for both North River and Dry River, there was a statistical difference between tree cover and non-tree cover sides. The difference was greater for Dry River than it was for North River.
Our results show that there was no statistical difference in the number of species found based on tree cover on the sides of the river. There was a statistical difference based on the river in which we are collecting data, when comparing standard error bars. The total number of species found on the side with tree cover was 15, and the total number of species found on the side without tree cover was 18.
Based on our data, we are leaning towards supporting our hypothesis. Species richness was higher for sides with tree cover. The average number of species and individuals were not consistently statistically different. Without further supporting data, we cannot completely support our hypothesis. From our findings, it is important to note that tree cover and other riparian vegetation, or the lack thereof, will affect the community structure of macroinvertebrates, based on the types of food sources found near the riverbanks.